Well, thank you for everyone for joining today. Metropolitan Energy Center's webinar, What is an Energy Code Anyway? Policymakers hold the keys to better buildings. So a quick overview of the agenda. We'll give an overview of MEC and our Energy Solutions Hub, overview of the Energy Code, of how it's developed and adopted, the impact of the Energy Code, what's this going to cost, what's next, and questions. Again, it's going to be a shorter presentation, so we have plenty of time for questions. First, just want to give a quick overview of Metropolitan Energy Center, MEC. So we're a nonprofit that's been around since 1983. We've worked with thousands of businesses, municipalities, and individuals, residents across Kansas and Missouri to transform energy use in the building and transportation sectors. In the past 5 years alone, we've managed $25 million in federal grants. And so we've helped that money, mostly through the DOE and EPA, get to Kansas and Missouri communities. So we do that through our building performance program, which you'll hear more from Mary, but that's how we originally started out, helping KCMO residents improve the efficiency of their homes. We also have an energy efficient demo home right off the plaza. It's historic and retrofitted to show that energy efficient homes can be affordable and be done in older homes, and Master Gardeners also manages that garden from us, so on Emmanuel Cleaver Boulevard and Troost. We also have our sustainable transportation program, which we're not talking about transportation today, but a quick overview. We house the Kansas City Regional and Central Kansas Clean Cities Coalitions. So basically, we connect fleets, individuals, businesses to resources, training, and funding to implement new transportation technologies. So here's just a couple of them. Of our recent projects, the solar EV chargers for the city of Olathe, Kansas, some electric vehicle chargers in McPherson, Kansas. KCMO in every district has streetlight chargers now on some of their light poles, one of the first projects in the world to do that. And that on the right is an all-electric yard truck that's actually made here in Kansas City, deployed in Edwardsville, Kansas. Actually, Johnson County Wastewater Department has them as well. And these are just a few of our projects. We've also helped a lot of bigger diesel trucks go to different fuels, cleaner fuels and EVs. But unfortunately, those aren't always quite as exciting as, streetlight chargers or solar chargers, but we've done a lot of that work, and it greatly improves the local air quality as well as air quality and health for the drivers and technicians. But I'll hand it over to you, Mary, to give an overview of our Energy Solutions Hub.
Thanks, Emily. Welcome, everybody. So glad to see you on here. My name is Mary English. I'm the Building Program Performance Program Manager, and I've been at MEC roughly 2.5 years at the reinvigoration of our Energy Solutions Hub, which was initially getting ready to launch, and then the pandemic happened. So there was a pause, and starting in 2021, we relaunched our Energy Solutions Hub using funding that was pushed through by the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. But we are here for the entire metro region across the state line to emphasize. And we're essentially a education and resource for all. If you live or work in a building, we can help you. And we do this through partnerships with Children's Mercy Hospital and several other non-for-profits across the area. We also are in charge through that contract. It's the only thing that's specifically for within the Kansas City, Missouri boundaries, the benchmarking ordinance facilitator for our private building owners out there with 50,000 square feet or higher. Kansas City, Missouri has a benchmarking program, and Danielle and Anna, our customer service reps, are there Monday through Friday to help owners benchmark. I can certainly answer questions more on what we do. Next slide. One of these such trainings that we began in 2021 with an expert here in Kansas City, Charla, is energy code training. This was initially launched for building code officials. So we started that, and it was proved so successful. We had we've had not just one, but multiple comments. This was some of the best training that people have ever attended. We had 4 like that alone just in the last training we had 2 weeks ago. And why is because we teach to the building science and why energy code has the policy measures in it, not just the what. So we're continuing this work with a new grant, which I'm going to highlight here in just a minute. But we've had over 152 attendees. There's a picture there. Yeah, that was perfect. So there's Charla, our trainer. We've done training not just at our own work facility, Plexpod in Westport, but we've partnered with the Sheet Metal Workers Union. And the Builders Association also helped us host a commercial related training. This is, again, subsidized by the contract, so it's free to attendees. They get free CEUs. They've gotten a free, very valuable building codes book with commentary. And again, Charla there that's standing with me on the left has really been doing a great job in really connecting with contractors, policymakers, building code officials, and all those attendees who have been attending this series. And we'll have more of these classes starting in 2024. Next slide is Brittany and Justice. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, we were awarded a large grant of $6.8 million. Now that money is going to be spread with several, almost 30 partners across Kansas and Missouri for a jobs pipeline program that we will be launching in January of 2024. And this is to support new code implementation with the vocations that will be required to test the buildings. Kansas City, Missouri passed an unamended 2021 International Energy Code, and in that has requirements that, and we'll be telling you that have been amended out of most of the iterations of code to date, except for Kansas City's code. So we need a workforce now to support the industry so we can put the action behind the policy. We're super excited to get that started. You can also tell all your out-of-town friends that this grant is going to support basically a new curriculum, new vocation for commercial buildings and building energy efficiency vocations right here. Kansas City, Kansas Community College is our partner, along with Missouri University and Missouri S&T, that are going to be teaching these brand new vocational classes for our entire state to support these codes. And then we were just awarded last week a bulk prize also from the Department of Energy in partnership with the Kansas City, Missouri Public Libraries to use the libraries for information and demonstration of efficiency and how it impacts occupancy lives. And we're going to get again to those impacts here in just a minute. I think I'm turning it over back. Next slide. Yes. Okay, Emily, back to you.
Yeah, before we get into the impact of the code, just wanted to give a quick overview. So it's a part of a suite of model codes for commercial that includes multifamily and residential buildings. So you see there on the right, there's a lot of different building codes. There's a plumbing code, an electrical code, but we're talking about the International Energy Conservation Code. A lot of times people shorten it to the IECC, or today we'll just say Energy Code. So the Energy Code lays out minimum requirements regarding energy efficiency for new construction and major renovations. So major renovations qualify as changing any of the main systems. So again, today we're just talking about the Energy Code. And a lot of times when people think of energy efficiency, you just think of appliances, more efficient refrigerator and HVAC, but the Energy Code actually covers the whole building itself. So insulation in the walls, the floors, the ceiling, windows, air leakage, testing, your duct testing. And so what's really important about this is a lot of these things, once a home or building is built, you cannot see them anymore. And it's very hard and expensive to go in sometimes and make some of these updates. It's much more efficient to do it up front. And also too, to keep in mind that it is created as a package. So if you change one thing in the Energy Code, like insulation, that's going to impact other things with testing requirements. So that's something to keep in mind, is that It's developed as a package, and these are also minimum requirements. So if your municipality or state want to go above and beyond with their energy code, they can certainly do so, but this is just a minimum guide, and that we will talk, and I'll share shortly how, okay, we have this energy code we're supposed to follow, but where does it come from? So the US DOE updates these codes every 3 years, and so it takes about 3 years to update. And they're currently in process of finalizing the 2024 suite of building codes, which includes the 2024 energy code. And so that's a very long process. And actually, any interested party can participate by submitting proposals, testifying, and then certain individuals have voting power. And now that's changed a little over the years, but I know at one point when they were having some meetings in DC about the codes, a Johnson County official was headed there to give input and vote. So this is something that is constantly being updated. And then once it is finalized, the DOE determines, okay, this is the national code for the next 3 years. So again, everyone kind of has an idea out and during those 3 years what the new code is going to look like. It's definitely not a surprise. Again, any interested party can provide comments. And so once the DOE says, okay, here are the codes, the authority having jurisdiction, the state, county, or municipality can adopt them and enforce them whenever they would like. So jurisdictions can also modify or amend those codes. So some states adopt a statewide code. For example, Nebraska, they have a statewide building code, including energy codes. But as you all probably know, Kansas and Missouri are 2 of 8 home rule states. So our codes are adopted at the local level. And so they can also amend those as they see fit, as they would like. But again, just a reminder, when you start making amendments, other things are impacted and you might not qualify for certain funding. So just a reminder that jurisdictions can amend the code. So maybe your municipality says it has the 2018 energy code, but that code can be amended to basically a 2009 code. And across the Kansas City Metro, besides like KC-Mo, all the municipality codes are heavily amended. So most of them say 2018, but have amendments that really knock down their efficiency. That's just something to keep in mind, the amendment portion. So now that I've talked about how they're developed, I'll hand it over to Mary to talk about the impact of the energy code.
Thank you, Emily. That was great. Okay, so just a couple of slides to visualize how the energy codes reflect best practice. So in your mind, what do you think? Left or right? Which is best practice? We're looking at a residential rim joist in a basement, in an unfinished basement. So that's where your floor joists sit on top of your foundation wall. So for insulating and rim joist, and then we'll show the answer here. Yes, so the right is best practice, and the rim joist is a really big area of inefficiency in existing buildings. And I would guess, just somebody that's been in hundreds of homes in the Kansas City area as a former home energy auditor, that your house might have what's on the left. And if you go down into the basement and flip over that square fiberglass bat, I would bet dollars to donuts that it's picture framed in dirt, which fiberglass, unless it's air sealed and covered on all 6 sides, is an air filter. It's not an insulator or an air sealer. So best practice is actually foam board, picture framed with spray foam. So that's just one example. Another example is using infrared. So the energy auditing industry really needs this tool to help building owners see what's in their walls. This is an infrared image that shows a typical home, residential, inside of a residential home that's being heated in the winter. So the yellow and the orange is showing a thermal wall that it is working, except where there are gaps in the walls. The purple dark bluish are cold spots, and this is the way buildings are still being built. Kansas City, Missouri, again, codes will not allow this to happen. We can get into those details if anybody has any questions at the end of this, but this is very typical when you use fiberglass bats, which is legal across most of the area. An R13 bat in a 2x4 wall, if it's not installed correctly, will have cold spots, and most of our bats are not installed correctly. And so policy can change this. The 2021 International Energy Code that Kansas City passed again, walls are not allowed. This cannot happen because the code doesn't allow it. Next slide, please. So the Energy Code has an impact all of our residents and constituents for some of you. It ensures that buildings are safe places to work and play and call home. We're going to talk about a report that backs this up. And it protects our most vulnerable residents because it promotes energy equity. So when you have best practices being used in new buildings, it prevents renters from having to put up with a building that was built with poor code. And that promotes that equity that we a lot of times don't think of when we talk about affordable housing. We just talk about that rent and mortgage, and really affordable housing definition needs to include utilities, because renters usually are going to be paying the utilities directly for their bills, and the landlords cut out of that process and may not understand that the building needs energy efficiency upgrades. So this is just a few examples. We're going to get into some more details here of specifics. And just a note, our building stock in Kansas City is outdated. There is a lot of work that needs to be done on retrofits. And if there is a gut retrofit, the new building energy code will apply. So that's helpful. And our buildings, and that's actually the most recent figures show closer to 70% that our green is budget in Kansas City region across the metro, or more than 60, like around 66% of our greenhouse gas budget. And then again, almost half of our residents are renters. So again, policy is there to protect not just the home buyer for a better home, but the renter for a comfortable, safe place to live. And okay, so when we're talking about occupancy health, what we're looking at here is an example of tearing out a wall and seeing that there is mold in that wall. And when you have, in our climate, an unventilated, not well air sealed wall, you can have black mold growth sight unseen inside those wall cavities. Drop soffits is a big one in kitchens that we used to find mold because kitchens are high humidity and poorly insulated if they're bordering an attic with a drop soffit. And in fact, we have an example here in Kansas City. I think that's the next slide. Yeah. So I don't know how many of you drive by the old, I call it old, but it's still new and lovely. The Woodside Racket Club started a development before the shutdown, a few years before the shutdown, for a luxury apartment complex. And I used to be a member until COVID killed my membership. And I drove by that building every day and was like, that's not the right way to build a building. But my calls went unanswered. So it ended up having mold because the energy code in Westwood was amended to, again, allow things to be structured in a way that ended up having mold growth immediately in the walls, and everybody had to move out and it had to be gutted and redone. So this is a problem, not with old buildings, but with new buildings if we don't have best practices being used in the construction. And then here's another example that mold forced 100 Kansas City, Kansas Community College students out of housing. And again, it's not always attributed to inefficiency. but usually in buildings, especially if you're finding it in the walls, is attributed to the way that wall was constructed without a good energy code to guide the way. Next slide, please. And then health and safety can, we used to have an example from 2021, it was 2021, might have been 2022, of a Bronx fire that killed 17 people in a high-rise that was freezing. Most of the residents were using space heaters. Well, most of our homes in Kansas City have, again, if you have a bonus room over a garage, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's too hot in the summer, it's too cold in the winter, and we're just used to thinking that this is the way our buildings are, that they're cold and drafty in the winter, and we use space heaters. And space heaters are not just the most expensive way to heat a space, but they're also dangerous. And this is an extreme example, but again, it can be real life or death issues, like the example that happened in the Bronx. But here's one that just happened in our own backyard. Next slide, please. Okay, I think, am I still going? Okay.
Oh yeah, you might be going, just the extreme weather impact of not having the.
Yeah, okay, so FEMA, really, we have a lot of funding that comes through FEMA for disaster relief, of course, and they are paying attention to this. There's actually going to be money that's coming through, again, through the Inflation Reduction Act, which is throwing money through non-for-profits like ours to get our buildings and using best practices and our residents and industry officials trained. And so the goal of FEMA looking ahead is going to be integrating building codes and standards to help our communities with their resiliency. So you're probably hearing about resiliency quite a bit. So for example, we had 60,000 people after that severe storm moved through in July. I remember very well because my power was out for 3 days from this storm. And I remember looking at my window when it rolled through. I was working from home that morning right before the power went out, and I was heading for the basement because it was scary. Well, it knocked out power for tens of thousands of people. And building codes not only can help with resiliency in a proactive way, but once the power goes out, a building code that emphasizes good insulation and air sealing will allow people to live in their homes comfortably for longer as they're waiting for the power to be turned back on. Next slide, please. And this is something that we are talking about. In fact, we just posted a blog about this report. We really encourage you to go online and find it. There is the link there in the bottom right-hand corner where the study is published. This was done with our partner, Children's Mercy Hospital, and the economics department, the statisticians, the doctorates, and their students at UMKC did the actual work. They merged Kansas City's the funding that Metropolitan Energy Center managed back under the Obama administration. There were 3 years of weatherization that were done under that bill. And Children's Mercy Hospital has addresses of all the children that come to them for asthma attacks and care. And the doctorates at UMKC did a merge purge, protecting the personal data to link the addresses where weatherization work was done and where kids suffer from asthma. And after they did their control group comparison with the addresses where weatherization work was done, they found that there was a 34% difference between children's asthma problems and intensity in homes that were not weatherized versus those that were weatherized. So there was a significant drop in asthma visits to the emergency room, occurrences, and how intense those attacks are. It's a white paper. I'm not going to say much more to this because I could talk all day about the details. I want to keep this moving along. So I'm done here. Okay, Brittany, you're up.
Great, thanks, Mary. So we're going to kind of shift a little bit into talking about energy and equity. Energy codes, as you know, can have quite an impact on the quality of housing and the amount that folks are paying in their utility costs. And I just want to read the definition of energy equity. Energy equity recognizes that disadvantaged communities have been historically marginalized and overburdened by pollution, underinvestment in clean energy infrastructure, and a lack of access to energy efficient housing and transportation. And so this is really important because we need to realize that the codes that our buildings have do have an impact on do people have access to healthy, efficient housing? And is this housing affordable? And the definition of affordable housing is that people are paying no more than 30% of their gross income for housing costs, and that should include utilities. And in today's day and age, we know that that's not quite the case for many people. Some folks are spending well over that 30% of their income on housing. Next slide, please. And I just want you to know that, individuals and families with insufficient income, they often have to choose between paying their utilities and paying for other necessities. And there's quite a few reasons why certain people have access to healthy, efficient homes and others don't. Inequity and inequality don't just happen in a vacuum. They don't just appear out of thin air. There are policies that are in place, people in positions of power that facilitate these things. And we really do like to hit home that a lot of the homes that are not efficient, that are, dilapidated, are underinvested, a lot of them are in areas that have been, subject to racial policies like redlining. Folks of different ethnic backgrounds were not allowed to get home loans in certain areas. And so you can see here from this map, the University of Richmond did a study on redlining for our entire country. And here we can see the metro area. On the east side of Kansas City, you can see a lot of that red, a lot of that yellow, which showed, the way that these realtors were categorizing areas in our city as hazardous and definitely declining based on the folks that lived there. And then you can see the blue and green spots that are desirable and best. And you can see that here in the downtown area of Kansas City, Prairie Village, Mission, Fairway, all of those places that today have very high property values. They didn't just randomly become that way. And so it's just important to note the underlying causes of, inefficient buildings and homes and higher utility bills as we look towards solutions in the future. So this is just a slide that shows that. And the correlation between utility costs and housing costs going up and the impact on residents, especially low-income residents, is very, very astounding. Due to the pandemic, a lot of world affairs, inflation, people are really feeling the impacts of costs on their wallets. And these two sources, local newspapers here, have published articles in this past year about the rising cost in housing and utilities. And so rent, surprisingly, and you would not have believed this, but in the top 50 metro areas, Kansas City had the biggest year-over-year jump in rent prices. Shocking, I know, for Kansas City. When there's a lot of different metro areas out there, Kansas City had the biggest jump. And so we can see that from July 2022 to July 2023, there was a 16% year-over-year change, and the median rent is about $1,600. And granted, not everybody pays $1,600 in rent. That's just the median. But the fact of the matter remains, costs are climbing. And, there's also the new time of use plans by Evergy. And during peak hours between 4 and 8 p.m., the rate changes from 9 cents to 38 cents in that time frame. And so that can cause, some financial issues for folks that are already living paycheck to paycheck and can't necessarily adjust their energy usage. So that's just something that we want to make sure folks are aware of. And just one last slide, about housing and utility costs. In Kansas City, of the top 48 metro areas, Kansas City is ranked 7th highest for energy spending and energy burden. So about 44.5% of your income being spent on energy costs. For renters, it goes a little bit higher. 6.1% of their income is spent on energy. And for low income households, even higher. KCMO ranks 9th highest with an energy burden of 8.5% of their income. And so, it just shows you that those of us in lower income ranges are more impacted by the volatile, and increasing housing and energy costs we're seeing. And it eats up such a big chunk of our money. And that's why energy codes are important, because they can really improve the quality of the buildings we're living in. So in the winter, all of our, warm air is not, leaking out of our homes. And in the summer, it's not, leaving our homes and making us crank up our AC and our heaters and everything like that. So just wanted to show you that, folks who are in lower income ranges, they're spending so much of their monthly income on housing. And so building codes are one way to ensure that we can reduce those costs and keep folks healthy. So I'm going to pass it over to Emily.
Thanks. Thanks, Brittany. Mary's up, but I just want to point out too is I thought before we gave this presentation last time that, the high renter number in Kansas City is because of like Kansas City, Missouri, but the numbers across the metro are even in more areas like Prairie Village and others is very high as well. So I just want to note that a lot of these issues aren't, renters are not unique just to Kansas City, but I'll hand it over to Mary. Thanks, Brittany, on talking about construction costs.
Thank you. Thanks, ladies. Okay, so we get a lot of questions on costs, so we're not going to ignore the topic of construction costs that Energy Code is rumored to spur. And we're here to say might be slight upcharge, but it is been researched ad nauseum by our national lab. Pacific National Laboratory analyzes the Energy Code and for each state. So you can go and find the analysis for any year code compared to the year previous for Kansas, Missouri, just by Googling it. And so these tables are from the Kansas report. So the first two here, we're talking about, the first top one is talking about raw costs, construction costs. This doesn't have any margin or in it. It's just construction for labor and materials. And it's just talking about, we have 2 climate zones in our region. Most of us are in 4, but north of the river up into the northern parts of our metro, you get into colder climates. And so these are just comparing for if you have a foundation that's a crawl space, if you have a foundation that is a conditioned basement, or if you're just a slab on grade, or if you have an unheated basement, that type of construction, this is the bump and increase. And so if you're looking at prices for market rate prices for buildings, this will turn out to be around 1 to 2% increase. However, the table below it is showing the good stuff there on what consumers of these homes. Now, this is compared with the 2015 IECC. Even though it's the 2021 code, the comparison was done because a lot of cities have the Energy Code in this 6-year cycle. So, the life cycle savings, the annual consumer cash flow, everything is a positive when you look at the code. And then I know we're running up on time here, so I want to make sure that I give Emily enough time. But I also wanted to mention that the Inflation Reduction Act has very robust tax credits per home that are built to Energy Star certification, which is a really easy extension of building to code, just a checklist. I used to checklist a lot of Energy Star new buildings. So you can get anywhere, depending on the features of the home, $2,500 to $5,000 per property directly to the builder. So already we have ways to offset the cost for the contractor. And yeah, please, this is a great website to visit to look at the complete list of programs and incentives for your zip code. Just go to that, and we'll send this information to you as well via email. Next slide, please. And then I also want to address the argument that if you do anything, even if it's just $1,000 of an increase to your property cost, that it means that people can't afford to buy new homes. And we found, now this is 2022, this is information that we worked up in 2022, so we'll go back and get it updated, but we found that after Columbia and St. Louis passed an unamended 2018 code, that's important. There are a lot of municipalities, as Emily mentioned, that are on the 2018 code, but the residential side has been amended to about a 2009 equivalent through most of our cities here. But we found an unamended code that the industry was saying was too expensive to implement. Permits did not go down in these cities after the code was passed in 2018 and 2019. In fact, they held steady or they increased. And so we have not found the evidence across our states yet that less homes are being bought or built because of those permit pulls, excuse me. And finally, this is because systemic challenges are exacerbating this need to amend. Usually especially for commercial buildings, the developer is not going to be the same company as the building manager, and so their incentive is to limit costs. So they're not going to see that quick return on investment because they're not managing the building that they're building. Also, systemic challenge, again, majority of tenants pay the utility bills. And in our region, we don't have very much stick or carrot really to spur building owners to upgrade their existing buildings. That will be enough on that. Can I answer questions?
Oh, we just had one more quick slide before then. Yeah, thanks, Mary. Definitely, yeah, submit your questions. We can unmute too about, you're probably thinking, okay, this was great information. What am I supposed to do with it? So we'll send out these resources, but contact us to have us present or attend an upcoming meeting or event. We can give a Healthy Homes presentation. We're offering those with a contract with Children's Mercy Hospital. Schedule a tour at our energy efficient demo home we mentioned earlier. No cost, any group, let us know what works for you. We'd love to give you a tour. Also answer any of your questions. And also a big reminder is have those impacted by policies, your residents, give input. A lot of times, we get input from developers and things who get the, the tax breaker credit, but then they're gone, and then we're picking up the pieces with inefficient homes and buildings that have high utilities. So again, get those most impacted, the people living in these structures for years to come who are paying taxes in your community, what they think. Contact your utilities to better understand what programs and resources are available to your residents. I'm sure you all are familiar on the Johnson County side. I think it was estimated in spring of next year, the programs that are available to Missouri customers with Evergy will be available in Kansas. So this is a good time to contact them to get ahead of the game, and we can connect facilities to see what's going to be available to your residents, or maybe have them come present to some meetings. Meet with your local health department, building officials, grant and home repair assistance staff, or community organizations to understand what they're seeing in the community. What health issues are they seeing? How much are they providing for assistance for utility bills and rent per month? And have they seen that go up or go down? And health department, those health issues we've talked about. And then look at nearby best practices. As Mary mentioned, KCMO has the 21 International Energy Code with Few or no amendments that's into effect, so hopefully here we're soon how that's going. Prairie Village and Marion both have grant programs to make energy efficient improvements to homes. And then Mission launched this year or last year an energy audit pilot program where residents can get energy audits, which there are tax credits for those as well through the IRA. And then on a sliding scale, they help you determine, I think they're doing 15 homes or so to make those improvements. So those are just some ideas of things you can do to better understand this issue. And again, we're always here for questions. But speaking of questions, we have some time left.